Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Today we are going to be talking about open source security and OWASP. Now, a bit about myself. Before we go into it, open source is awesome. I'm security relations leader at Snyk, and I also root for pro bono work wherein I support a lot of open source communities, and one of them is OWASP. And when I talk about OWASP, OWASP is Open Web Application Security Project, which I'm going to be talking about in detail in the coming slides. Let's take a moment to reflect at this picture. When you look at this photograph, what comes to your mind? Is it like a futuristic outlook of the world? Or perhaps the uprising of the robotic overloads? For me, I ask myself, now, how much does the robot learn from our child and where exactly the information is stored? There could be times when the information is getting stored on the cloud. We might download some patches which might be malicious for us. And there might be a scenario where the robots is able to learn about ourselves. However, how much developers play a role in these security incidents? And today, I would like to share the real world examples or stories of how developers play a role here. Why would we care about software security? And at the same time, I will leave you who to trust. Now, if I talk about an incident wherein developers become part of the malware distribution ecosystem, can that happen? Absolutely, that can happen. So, there was an incident in 2018 wherein JavaScript ecosystem vulnerabilities faced its first spearheaded surgical attack, which targeting maintainers and developers' account. When that happened, that dated back to 2011. Now, it existed since then. There were millions of releases, downloads, but what happened was that there was no patch which was updated in the 2 years, but gained millions of downloads. When that happened, out of the blue, a person shows up and says that I want to help, which is fine. But what happens if that person adds malicious content to it? There are things which can go to a very different direction. Now, if I talk about an academic research which was done, and in that paper in 2019, it was investigated that the properties of language based software ecosystems is huge. And 61% of the open source packages on npm.js are abandoned. Now, this is not just with npm.js, but could be any other ecosystem as well. And we left with the waiting for the patch, right? That can happen. Now, of course, I don't need to tell you that, but half of the time coding is spent waiting for the packages to install. And how much do we really know about these dependencies which we use in the code? Like, I have my application totally running on open source code. And let's take a look at what happens in the language based ecosystem. This is the illusion of our application, that this is our code. But how much our code is this? This is the small mini circle. And one of the research says that 10 to 20% of the code is the custom code and rest of the code is open source. And as I said in the beginning, open source is amazing. And this is the reality. But one thing we need to take care of is direct and indirect dependencies. There are direct dependencies which are part of the code, which we get to know and fix it. But then there are some interdependencies or indirect dependencies which generally we don't get to know, which we need to understand. And while we are understanding, how much of a thought are we giving about our own infrastructure? We need to understand our own infrastructure first. Like, I use Microsoft Visual Studio a lot, like day in and day out, because that's my favorite. But then there are many other IDEs which are there. I've used multiple others as well. So in January 2021, there was a researcher which found a bug in the Visual Studio Code. Like, if you are running an outdated plugin, it can pause a remote code execution or a command injection in your application or Visual Studio Code. But I'm so happy that we all are so responsible that we reported it due diligently. And that's how we're trying to understand the space of open source security, the state of open source security. This is one case wherein marked library or JavaScript markdown parser library, which was updated, where somebody actually reported it, and It took 1 year to fix the bug. Now, that generally takes time. Now, why I say that? Because no one is legally or contractually bound with it. But we all are there to support this ecosystem. Now, when we all are there to support this ecosystem, we need to learn a lot more around what is there in the whole software security system or whole software system. Another important point to remember is compromising maintainer's account. Can someone compromise my account? Could be. That can be possible. Now, why do I say that? Because there was one research which was conducted by Node.js ecosystem in 2017, which says that 14% of the credentials which are part of the ecosystem are very insecure. Now, this was conducted by the foundation itself because they had the data and they could figure out and they actually sent the notification. But if I am using an insecure password, anybody can get into my account. So it becomes our responsibility to fix it. Now, when we are using all of this, do we not need account security hygiene? And do we follow our security hygiene? We do. We really do. Do we use toothbrushes? Yes, we do use toothbrushes. So toothbrushes are like passwords. Now, when we don't share our toothbrush, why do we share our password? And if our code packages can reach thousands or millions of developers, it becomes our responsibility to maintain it and maintain it with multi-factor authentication. There is some stats that we're using less of multi-factor authentication at this moment, and it's not just with npm.js but with many other systems. And there are many flaws like pseudo vulnerability flaws to gaining privilege access and many more which are spreading across. And then comes software supply chain risks which are impacting our organizations. But it gets us to a thought that, are we going to have more software in the future? Absolutely. I'm a huge supporter of software and open source software because that helps us. When our own websites are on open source security, we are getting more and more dependent on it. And it becomes a responsibility for us to help someone, trust someone. So when I talk about OWASP is Open Web Application Security Project, which was started 20 years back. Now, 20 years is a long time. And I got to know maybe in 2011, where I thought it's just a testing guide or something. But then it's a huge community of developers, security researchers, leaders, and everyone around. There are many open source projects which are helping the mission, making sure application security is there for everyone. We should learn from it so that we can take knowledge, we can impart that knowledge. Now, I have collected some of the tools, not all, but some of the tools here, which are helping us. Because when we are talking about fixing all those vulnerabilities, bugs, and everything, we need a system which can help. So here, OWASP Amass is there, which actually is a flagship project which is performing a lot of mapping and attack surfacing. So if you want to know about your own ecosystem, what's there on the internet, you need something. So OWASP Amass is an open source component which we can leverage, which really, really helps. And I totally love this project. And not just that, I, being a developer once, I remember how hard it is to get to a point where we get in sync with the security people and test our own vulnerabilities. So Zap is just the tool or a project which helped me in the past in testing my own security flaws before I even gave it to the security people. And there are cheat sheets. Like, I am a huge supporter and maintainer and follower of cheat sheets. That helps me in understanding where things could go wrong. What are the test cases I can pick up so that I can test my application against security? So cheat sheets, there are many contributors. Even you can become a contributor if you are an expert, or even if you know about that language, or you feel there's something that should be part of a certain checklist. There are many checklists. And when you have all of that, you want to secure or you want to log the defect somewhere. So Defect Dojo is one of the project where you can have multiple integrations for many of tools. Now, when I say integrations, there is one big picture come into picture that I have multiple tools and I want to have integrations. So where should I get the data from? And today in the demo, I will be showcasing a demo around a vulnerability scanner and a tool which maintains all the servers, which actually maintains the performance. And we can map those vulnerabilities and figure out a lot of issues in our server systems prior hand. And when I talk about all of that, learning become an important part. So this is one of my the go-to project if I want to tell someone about it. And I want any of you to learn security knowledge framework. So this talks about a lot around hands-on code fixing, hands-on application testing, because it is integrated with many other vulnerable web applications. Because I speaking about, oh, these are the vulnerabilities. There are so many things. But if I don't tell you how you can practice, it is not going to be right. So this is one of the amazing tool which you can leverage. You can download it on your system, and especially for leaders, I've suggested that you can actually put it on a common system, or you can have some exercises using the security knowledge framework, which is like the amazing thing for all of our developers, testers. Now, what's there? Now, when we are learning, do we not need to see an app? How exactly we work with that? So before I start off my demo, as I said that I'm going to be using a vulnerability scanner, as well as I'm going to be using a system which can integrate with that and give me a better picture of my servers, which can be impacted with any of those vulnerabilities. So I'm going to be using Snyk and Datadog here. You can take any other scanner, any other system. There are Neurologin and many other systems are there which you can integrate. So because I work at Snyk, so I thought of picking it up, and it has an open source component. And I was at Dash conference and a Datadog conference, so I thought, okay, any which ways I'm working at Datadog, so I should use that. Now, when I talk about it, what I did, first of all, I picked up the API keys from Datadog, and then I picked up the keys from Snyk because I wanted to have an integration where the integrations was available. So I started with that, and it gave me a very nice picture. But I'm sure you want to see how exactly I did it. So give me 1 second. Let me go ahead and show you. So what I did here is that I have a list of vulnerabilities which I've scanned it using a vulnerable web app or vulnerable code per se. Now, this is a repository which is publicly available. You can go ahead and check on the GitHub as well, where Java Goof I use a lot of times, and then for Docker I have other repositories. So here I am using Java Goof, and what I am trying to do is I'm going to go ahead and test it again, my repository, so I can show you that these bugs which you saw, the like green, red, yellow lines that are showcased. Now here it takes a couple of seconds to scan, and it comes up with all the vulnerabilities from remote code execution to any other vulnerability. But now when you are testing all of that, how do you even get to know that there are vulnerabilities that exist or that could be there in your application? Now, let me go ahead and pause here and actually show you something very, very interesting. Here, this is one of my app. Now, when I talk about this app, this is my to-do list. Now, I showed you that there is a scanner which is scanning vulnerabilities, but do you think before that I should know? Like, if I am an attacker, I would like to know about the app. But if I am a developer, I'm curious about it. And here, I'm going to go ahead and sign up. So as I hope demo gods shower their blessings on me, because a lot of times things don't go in the right direction. So let me go ahead and sign up, where it's go ahead, taking a couple of seconds. Let's see. All right, it has come. So I'm going to go ahead and click on dash, no, dash at conf. Now, conf. Use a secure password, or somebody will get into your network. It is important to have a strong password. Like I use a lot of passwords. I'm sure all of us use. So I use a password manager so that I don't forget it. And I don't save it in my browser, because if I save it and somebody gets to it, I'll be in trouble. So see, I'm using an insecure password and I would not like to save it. Now, this is the message actually Chrome gives, that if I'm using an insecure password. Now, let's get back to the application, wherein what I like to do, the to-do list. I tend to forget things. Now, when I tend to forget things, I would like to note it down somewhere. So now here I have just signed up and I'm going to go to click on home, my account, and my account says my account, like all the information about it. Now here I can create a to-do list where I say Vandy and I'll mention the date as somewhere, not right now, but probably, okay, here 2021, February 2nd. Okay. Now I'm going to create a to-do list, which is created. Now I'm going to create another to-do list because I want to have the list of everything. So here I'll select pi. Now, when I select pi, what is pi? Pi is a symbol. Do we need our applications to accept such characters? Maybe, maybe not, based on the need. Now, when I do that and then create it, here it is trying to save that. Let's see what happens with it. Now, while it's trying to save, let me tell you an interesting theory about the application vulnerabilities. Now, when we are dealing with all these application level vulnerabilities, it can give us a view that how we can secure ourselves, our application, our ecosystem. And it is not just the developer's responsibility to secure our application. It becomes a security person responsibility also to understand what is there in the network, what is there in the application, what version are we using. It is very, very important because if, let's say, you as a developer trying to code a nice application, like a beautiful application, but what happens next? That you've been given a task to manage containers. You've been given a task to manage cloud. So there are so many things, responsibilities that come into picture. And here, as a security person, I would like to help you out. Now, let me see what happens to my account. Okay, let me create the list again here. Okay, let me create it. Okay, here it's created. So here, if you've seen that now the pi is not stored as a pi, it is an ASCII character. So there could be a flaw. As a developer, I would say, it's fine, it's a functionality, I'll just change the code. But as a malicious person, I would like to know more about the application. There could be some flaw, or there's something which is running in the background, which might be changing it, which might be printing it in a totally different way. So here I start scrubbing the application and I click on about. It gives me homepage, license, struts information, spring information, hibernate. Generally, we don't see all of these information publicly available in the applications. But as it's a vulnerable web app and here for demo, so I'm showcasing you. Now let's talk about this version. This is the same version which was used in the vulnerable web application. Which was that? So there was an Equifax breach that happened a couple of years ago, and that was one of the biggest breach which actually stuck with me. And there are many breaches that have happened around this after that as well, but then that stayed on with me because it made me realize how much open source is important and how much contribution is required for open source. And now when I talk about this vulnerability, here we have scanned our system. Now here, when we are scanning it, there are many vulnerabilities which have come. And there's one which says arbitrary command injection, which is totally related to the struts version, which is 2.3. And after that, there are many updates, there are many fixes which have come. And while it is trying to understand which vulnerability is that and how much applicability from severity, high, critical, medium, and there are a number of other indirect dependencies which are part of it. Even if we fix one bug, how about rest of the other bug that we need to take care of? So it talks about it. And that's why we are taking help from a scanner, which gets us all the data so that we get to know. Okay, so software composition analysis is something which actually helps us in understanding that. Now, when it is helping us, it also gives us the big view. Okay, this is a CVE, this is a exploit DB information, this is a POC, and these are all the vulnerabilities. Now, what I am trying to go to here is that there are multiple exploits that I can do, but I'm not going to do the exploit here because here we have seen that there was a pi which was using certain thing, and here on the screen I have my exploit which I can use and I can play around with my application and I can do a lot of stuff. And I can get into your application and think about, I get all this juicy information from there, right? So which I'm sure as a developer, I want help. And here I am helping, wherein here I have integrated, and integration helped me in getting the information that this is how I am building my profile. These are the things that I need to do. These are the things should be done. So with Java Goof, I'm going to be creating a list of high, medium, critical vulnerabilities, which are coming from vulnerability scanner to my ecosystem, which is helping me in understanding that, okay, these vulnerabilities need max attention at the moment because these are some critical service. And now you must be thinking how you can actually leverage it. So this is a script which is publicly available, which you can leverage to integrate these two products. But when I am talking about security, it is not just about the products, it is not just about the untrusted data or something, but here it talks about how much we understand the dependencies and application vulnerabilities, and how much we are avoiding those attackers, which are making sure that we become victims, where we don't want to be the victims. And I totally agree, application security is like a huge challenge. But why do I say that? Because there is one foot we have it in the open source dependencies, and other foot we have in the cloud native environment. Because we want our cloud native environments to use the newer technologies, but sometimes it's a big challenge to understand in the first go, right? We need to understand it in depth and then understand the security behind it. So, what if it was easier, developer friendly, actionable? When I say that, how about for all these vulnerabilities, from path traversal to any other vulnerabilities, there are fixes which are helping us. There are places where we get the information that these should be fixed. How about somebody telling us, okay, these are the things that are been fixed? So there's another nice open source tool is Snyk Advisor, which actually helps us in open source security. And on top of it, how about some best practices for open source security? Like, think about open source for cheat sheet for Java, for NPM, for Python, and for all of it. And open source, as I said again, open source is amazing and we need to use responsibly. And now, when I talk about that, let me tell you one important aspect. We can use our superpowers. And when we use that, we need to be good with each other. Now, how that can happen? With the Security Champions program. Now, why do I advocate about Security Champions program? Let me tell you one thing, but very, very important thing about it. Now, the Security Champion program is something which is very meaningful, and it is one program which actually bridges the gap between the security and the development teams. Both of these teams want to deliver the secure applications, and all of us agree to it that we want the best for our organizations. And traditionally, SDLC security has been coming at the last, and then coming with a stick saying that, oh, you have to do it. And somebody tells me that you have to do it, I'm like, I can't do it. And if you're forcing me, then though I will never be able to do it. So there, TIF starts coming. So, which we don't want. And in practice, we need in-depth expertise from the security team to be paired up with the development organizations at the breadth and length. And that's when I say security also has a role to play to understand the development teams and understand what softwares are we trying to deliver. And security champions are not just like, oh, we're just picking up developers, but they're the developers with an interest in security and a home in development environments. Now, they are the interface between the two teams and have traditionally been, which actually has been siloed. There was very, very big wall between them. So let's take a look at some of the benefits which are there. Now, when I talk about those benefits, what are those benefits which are helping us? So these benefits actually says that, okay, let's go ahead and talk about maybe have a focal point. Now, when we have a focal point, what do we need? So these focal points are from the development teams, which are sufficient and which are autonomous, which can only be achieved by the knowledge and understanding. And with security, it's important that the secure development techniques are understood. And who can help us? Security team can help some brown bag sessions for the development teams, and development team tells that, okay, these are the problems that we are seeing. Now, another important aspect is scale the security team linearly within the organization. It's common that for every 100 engineers, there are 10 operations people. And for every 10 operations engineer, there is one security person. Now, when that's the gap, how can we fill? By security champions and improve oneself to be better and well-rounded developer, and security team should be able to help that. Now, once that's there, how about we become an influencer in the whole ecosystem? I have seen developers becoming the security champions even better than security teams. And I know personally some of them. And when that's the case, how about the Security Champions program, which is getting the buy in from the executives? Like they say that, yes, we need something of this sort to help us out. And they are helping in structuring the Security Champions program. And when I talk about structuring, we need volunteers, we need security team volunteers, we need a strategy, we need some representation at the wider level. Also, we need properly defined cadence, and that cadence will actually track the amount of efforts that we are putting in. Now, when the efforts are being put in, and then there is a proper project management which is happening, we need to give the rewards and recognition to these people in a different way. Maybe a security voucher, maybe something else, maybe something for going to a conference, a security conference. I have seen people getting very excited about going to a security conference because they get to learn so much more. They get to connect with people more. Like, I am so happy to be part of a developer conference where I'm going to be meeting a lot of people like you. I would love to learn from all of you. And I know I am sharing some information, but I have a lot to learn from all of you. And then measurable goals, which I keep for myself. And I'm sure the Security Champions program actually really, really helps. And how about understanding each one of your journey, that how exactly you're trying to move your journey around security, because we all need security for our environments. Now, that's not just it. This program can have all of this, which I just talked about. But what does a champion do? The champions actually help in incorporate good open source security practices, can also be responsible in acting as a like primary advocate, and at the same time define and triage and remediate the vulnerabilities. So they can actually be a voice for it. And let me tell you a funny story, which is actually not funny, which happened with me a couple of years ago, wherein I was going for a Scrum meeting, and the Scrum meeting was preponed to like 15 minutes. And Scrum meeting generally happened for a very short time. Now, I was not invited because I was from a security team and they had a big release coming up. Now, when that happens, it becomes a really challenging task. Now, when that happened, it took me 6 months to have that reputation so that we can decide about it. We can actually discuss about all of the security issues that can come up and not being a roadblocker. And after 6 months, what happened? There was one big issue wherein earlier it was a medium flaw, but due to an update, it became a critical. And who recognized it? No, I did not. You must be thinking that security team. No, I was told by the teams that there is a security flaw which we feel could be a critical one. And when we measured it, turned out to be critical, which we worked together and we fixed it as early as possible. And one important task is that who can be a security champion? Could be a developer, DevOps manager, security analyst, soft skills needed. So anyone even with the soft skills, like who can motivate people and resolve the conflicts. They want to do the problem solving. They are attached to the open source ecosystem. They understand that open source security is important. And on top of it, personal improvement. That's the most, where we keep on improving ourselves, learn from all of these things around. Now we're almost at the end of the hour, and I want to give you these two resources where you can actually download the open source components. And OWASP, it's all-time favorite, so you can go to owasp.org. Even I am personally running two projects. One is around Spotlight series, where I spotlight on all the open source projects. So you can go to my YouTube channel and check out that. So just search for Vandana Verma and you'll be able to find it. Also, Snyk.io has open source scanners which you can leverage. And if you face any issues, you can reach out to me at any time on my Twitter handle, which is here on the last slide, InfoSec Vandana. Thank you so much for listening to me. And I'm so honored to be speaking at the conference. Thank you.